se lo des a nadie, cielito lindo que a mí me toca. Ay, 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 canta y no llores, porque cantando se alegran, cielito lindo, los corazones.
No metropolis in the history of the world has a more interesting background than Mexico City, capital of the Republic of Mexico, and formerly the heart of a great Indian empire, over which reigned Moctezuma, one of the last of the mighty Aztec emperors. It is difficult to believe that over 5 centuries ago, when practically all of the Indians of North America were living as savages, there dwelt here a vast population of well-organized and wisely ruled red men, who were versed in the finer amenities of human relationship and familiar with the fundamental principles of art, religion, and science. Mexico City was the goal of Cortez when in 1519 he landed his army on the coast of Mexico and learned of the fabulous wealth that surrounded the throne of Moctezuma. Then the great conquest began. The march of Cortez from the coast to Mexico City and the surrender and death of Moctezuma is one of the most thrilling chapters in history. But modern Mexico now engages our attention. The National Palace of Arts, in which is also located the National Theater, is regarded as one of the most beautiful modern buildings in all of Mexico. Its construction was begun in 1900 under the presidency of Diaz, and it was only recently completed. The most historic, if not the most interesting section of Mexico City is the Plaza Mayor, into which Cortez and his men marched and demanded the surrender of Moctezuma. On the site of the great cathedral at the far end of the square, there once stood an imposing Aztec temple, which was destroyed by Cortez. The foundations for the present structure were laid almost 4 centuries ago. In the 19th century, the church became so wealthy that it owned practically 1/3 of the Mexican Republic. During recent years, however, drastic reform laws have nationalized its property, deprived it of state support, and forbade it any participation in political affairs. The man who inspired the reform laws was Benito Juárez, formerly President of the Republic, and one of Mexico's greatest leaders and statesmen, the famous liberator who overthrew the reign of Maximilian. Something of the glamour of old Spain may still be seen in the parks of Mexico City, where prominent citizens ride forth in colorful costumes, not unlike those that were worn in the thrilling days of the conquest. When the Spaniards first appeared in Mexico on horseback, the bravest Indians fled or were prostrated in fright, for they had never seen a horse before. In fact, if it were not for horses, it is doubtful that Cortez could have defeated Moctezuma. Bullfighting is still the most popular sport of the Republic, and no visit to Mexico City would be complete without at least seeing a little of the colorful preliminaries that attend a typical bullfight. Many of the more enlightened Mexicans are opposed to bullfighting, and they refuse to patronize it. The great Mexican president, Diaz, was not in favor of the sport, but the people were so attached to it that even at the height of his power, he dared not abolish it. Nevertheless, there is an organized movement for the abolition of bullfighting. As a matter of fact, this cruel sport is forbidden today in several of the towns and districts of Mexico. Away from the bull ring at the floating gardens of Xochimilco, we find a setting that is more in keeping with our ideas of diversion. For here is something of the romantic side of old Mexico, which has endeared it to the world's lovers of music and romance. This This Mexican Venice forms a picturesque setting for a people who are naturally inclined to regard the more colorful and romantic diversions of life as essential to their happiness. And it is in this respect that we join with them and also say, Viva Mexico! Overlooking the city of Mexico is the Castle of Chapultepec, where most of the Mexican rulers have dwelt since the reign of the unfortunate emperor, Maximilian, who was placed upon the throne of Mexico in 1864 by the soldiers of France, and for 3 years conducted the functions of royalty here in superficial mimicry of the French court. Inside the castle may be seen the magnificent stained glass windows, which were imported from France by Maximilian for his beautiful young empress, Carlotta. As we gaze upon these world-famous windows, we recall the pathetic story of how Carlotta, in an effort to keep her husband on the throne of Mexico, went to France to plead with Napoleon III, who had threatened to withdraw his soldiers, but her pleading was in vain. The French troops evacuated Mexico, and after Maximilian was executed, Carlotta lost her reason and spent the remaining years of her life in a state of mental derangement. But at Chapultepec Castle today, these stained glass windows perpetuate her memory. On the picturesque terrace of Chapultepec Castle, we are entertained by the Típica Orchestra of the Mexico City Police Department, rendering the ever-popular Jarabe. Is the most popular dance of Mexico, typifying, as it were, the spirit of a people who dwell in a land of color, music, and romance. And it is with this thought that we reluctantly say farewell to historic Mexico City.